Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker is now just 27 days away from its official release by Disney, Lucasfilm, J.J. Abrams and crew that is all set and ready to end the Skywalker saga and the sequel trilogy itself. This is Mike Zero. Make sure to subscribe if you're new to the channel for future Star Wars content. Now, one aspect of Episode 9 that a lot of fans are truly looking forward to is, of course, exactly how JJ is going to utilize the characters of Palpatine, Luke Skywalker, Rey, Kylo Ren, and other fans are also very worried and concerned about exactly how this movie is really going to be utilized on the big screen and how it's really going to resonate with fans in general, and exactly how it's really going to be done by Disney and Lucasfilm. Now, with Episode 9 just on the horizon, we have just a couple of weeks to go until the release of this movie. We're getting very closer as the, days go on forward. And with that being said, J.J. Abrams is trying to make it the darkest Star Wars film there is. A lot of changes and adjustments were made throughout the months of course, August, September, and October. Now, with that being said, what's really intriguing and rather unfortunate all has to do with Mark Hamill's portrayal as Luke Skywalker in Episode 9. Now, specifically, it's explained that during many of the rewrites and reshoots of the film, many changes and adjustments were made by Disney and Lucasfilm, and that Kathleen Kennedy wanted a different tone of the film's second and third acts during the major transition of the movie. It's explained that one of the big changes has to do with deleting many scenes from the initial cut of the film, and that all of the scenes that Mark Hamill was able to improvise as Luke Skywalker were ultimately deleted. It's explained that in the previous cut of the movie, Mark Hamill had the opportunity to develop his own lines of dialogue for multiple scenes as a Force ghost and in the form of a flashback. It said that Mark Hamill was very upset with Disney's decision to remove the scenes that he had filmed that involved his own lines of dialogue. One of the sequences that Mark Hamill worked very hard on back in September of 2018 is when he filmed a scene that would be a flashback sequence in which Luke Skywalker would be exploring the aftermath of his Jedi training temple, being burned down to the ground and witnessing all of the dead Jedi on the ground in front of the destruction. It was said to be a moment in which Luke would be communicating with Force ghosts from the past, like Kenobi and Yoda, and reaching out to Luke and guiding him through the right decision as a Jedi, where Luke would disagree with Yoda and Kenobi's wisdom, where he would tell the story of Luke giving up as a Jedi. The scene was said to be very involved and emotional that actually Disney cut from the film. Another sequence that Hamill worked on was a sequence in which Luke would be a Force ghost and revealing himself in front of Kylo Ren during one of his travels as a Force Nexus area, where here Luke's Force ghost would be communicating with Kylo Ren and providing him new truths about Anakin Skywalker / Darth Vader that Kylo Ren would refuse to believe in the moment. This scene was also cut from the film that involved Mark Hamill's own lines of dialogue cut from the entire movie that would have been a part of the second act of the film. Mark Hamill was actually described to have worked closely with Abrams for these scenes and developed all of his dialogue on his own that would have actually given a true version of Skywalker through the eyes of Mark Hamill and how he wanted the character to be portrayed in parts of the film. Lastly, it's explained that one of the other scenes that were actually cut from Mark Hamill was able to provide his own lines of dialogue, involved the scene in which Luke Skywalker would appear just as he did in Return of the Jedi, where Hamill was de-aged and constructing Leia's lightsaber, where he would give a lesson to his sister Leia. This entire scene was reshot and reworked to be done in a different way, and that Mark Hamill was frustrated with how the film wouldn't include his improvised scenes for the movie by Disney and Lucasfilm, and that he worked hard on both of those in 2018 and the beginning of 2019. Many of these scenes are said to arrive on the Blu-ray edition for the release in 2020 of next year in either March or April. So let's go over a couple of parts about this and as to why this is going to be a very, big deal for Disney and Lucasfilm. Now, we've seen the backlash with The Last Jedi and how Luke was utilized in that movie and how a lot of fans really disagreed with Rian Johnson and his decisions on the actual movie itself and how it all came into fruition. A lot of fans just did not agree with how Luke Skywalker was used by Rian. And what's really unfortunate about this decision by Disney and Lucasfilm through the changes and the adjustments is that all of the scenes that Mark Hamill improvised have been cut from the movie itself. So You guys may remember that way back in early 2019, we heard by Oscar Isaac that this movie had a lot of, improv in it. A lot of actors were able to really improvise their scenes and exactly, what kind of pieces of dialogue they would choose to use on set. A lot of that also applied with Mark Hamill, and all of those sequences have been thrown out the window and deleted by Disney and Lucasfilm for who knows for what reason. And I think that the reason as to why they really wanted to make that shift is because Disney just wants their own version of Luke. It seems like that they don't really want Mark Hamill's vision of Skywalker. It seems like that they gave him a shot, and it just did not work with the current cut of the movie, which is very, unfortunate and is a terrible decision by Disney and Lucasfilm in my point of view. Now, with Luke Skywalker, right, at the end of the day, the Rise of Skywalker, the title in and on itself, you would expect that they would respect the Skywalker bloodline or do something very much valuable for the character of Luke, Anakin, Kylo Ren, and everybody connected to the Skywalker bloodline and lineage. And it just seems like that Disney and Lucasfilm really aren't making the right choices here with Episode 9 and are really bringing things in the wrong direction for the fans around the world. Now, the other piece that I just want to touch on here is that some of the scenes are actually going to involve Luke as a Force ghost and Luke Skywalker in the form of a flashback where it would all be done by Mark Hamill's own lines of dialogue that were ultimately cut from this movie. Now, this was all said to be scenes that were closely, made with J.J. Abrams, and later on, even George Lucas had a role in helping out Mark Hamill with those scenes, and it's very, bad in my opinion, the fact that Disney and Lucasfilm went through all these different cuts of the movie, as you guys may have heard, and how it really does kind of demonstrate that they don't really know exactly what they're doing with Episode 9. At least that's how I see things. It seems like that they don't really know exactly what they're doing. Am I impressed from some of the pieces of the footage that I have seen so far in TV spots and teasers and trailers? Absolutely. I think that this movie, regardless, is going to have its moments. It's going to have its good moments, and it's going to have its rather, upsetting moments where fans are going to roll their eyes and get very upset and annoyed. And the fact that Mark Hamill was upset and frustrated about these scenes being deleted almost reminds me of how Mark Hamill was also frustrated with Rian Johnson's decision of how Luke was actually being used in The Last Jedi, and how Mark Hamill and Rian had that, different vision of Luke, and Mark Hamill just had to go through with it all. So the Skywalker saga is now coming to an end, and Disney and Lucasfilm are really banking on this movie. This movie does determine the future of the franchise and exactly where things are going to stand for the new Star Wars trilogy, Disney Plus, the new Star Wars universe. I mean, the list goes on, really. And what they're really trying to do with the Star Wars franchise in the 2020s, it all rests on the Rise of Skywalker and how successful it's going to be, not just at the box office, but also how it's going to resonate with fans. It's kind of funny because I always find it quite annoying how the CEO of Disney, Bob Iger, always says that there is this, I guess you could say, problem within the Star Wars franchise for fans, how he states that it really is a fatigue issue with the movies, and that's why they have less movies coming out and less content in comparison to before. And in my point of view, this all really just has to do with the backlash and how fans are very upset with how the sequel trilogy was handled and how Disney has handled Star Wars, especially Kathleen Kennedy. And I think that this is a prime example as well of handling the scenes of Luke Skywalker that were all done by Mark Hamill's own lines of dialogue. Honestly, I believe that Mark Hamill is a very good writer, when it comes to, the ideas that he has demonstrated about how things should have been done in The Force Awakens. He really could have, written The Last Jedi or The Rise of Skywalker if he really wanted to, and I know he's not a writer and all like that, but I feel that he has better ideas than Disney and Lucasfilm does, from what Mark Hamill has said before in previous interviews. For press interviews for The Last Jedi, he talked about his vision of Luke and what he would have liked to see and what he thought would have been a better decision for the overall sequel trilogy. So, the last piece I will say here is that Mark Hamill's version of Luke Skywalker, it seems like that it's going to be completely just Disneyfied again, once again, and that Mark Hamill's take on things are just going to be thrown out the window here, and that is only going to be saved for the Blu-ray edition of the movie come 2020 of next year. So anyways, guys, drop a comment below. Let me know what you think about all of this in the comments, and if you guys did enjoy the content for today, do make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel. I thank you all so very much for the kind support, and I'll catch you guys next time.